Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are on the globe. I represent, as a CEO, the Sai Institute of Educare-USA since 2002. And my work has been since 1979 as Dr. Meena Chantapalli on emotional deprivation, protecting the brains, and plunged into neuroplasticity since 1990s and implemented that in my clinical practice 36 years before even anybody even talked about the neurocognitive development and the role of neuroplasticity because of my case that I took care of as a fellow at University of Michigan on emotional deprivation dwarfism as described by Dr. Moni in 1978 from Johns Hopkins University Department of Psychiatry. And also the power of observing the newborn and their behaviors, even from a simple technique of ringing a bell from Dr. Barry Brazelton's on behavior and touch points on the infant and toddler development caught my attention, and I've always implemented what happens in a child's life in reference to the caregivers and the family. That led to my evolution in pioneering multisensory integration to overcome etiopathologies of learning disabilities even among extremely newborn, premature newborn infants who were 25 to 26 weeks at birth and had 4 to 5 months neonatal stay. 40 of them are going to colleges today, and some of them are already working as professionals, and probably they're almost 40 years of age right now. I do represent the Sai Institute of Educare-USA, registered duly in 2002, and the SAI, Society for Assistance International, was registered in 1998. And I am, you can call it as hyper-focused neuroplastician who gave all professional life towards helping the families in a dyadic way to understand how the brain connects with the world, how we can prevent etiopathologies for learning disorder, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, sensory processing disorders by using the 5 senses from within the fetal stage of life within the uterus to the first 2 to 3 years of life, which is a strong foundation. So we need to have advocacy in developing a policy statement that every pediatrician, every family practitioner, every person who is going to deal with a newborn and taking care of a child should understand neuroplasticity, and in reference to neuroplasticity, handle the behaviors, cognitive development, social emotional learning, linguistic abilities, as well as physical development. They are intertwined like a rope. One leads to the other. So here we take a dive into this world, and welcome to my channel of the Sai Institute of Educare-USA. So I developed this slide for AP Telangana government when they offered that I should be able to talk to the parents in reference to neuroplasticity, so that the other children who already have autism will try to prevent autism spectrum disorders or neurodiversity. Is this 100% guarantee? No, because I cannot control what goes on in the blueprint of a child's genetic composition, but certainly epigenetics tell us if the environment, nutrition, a loving care with a nurture, safe and secure practices, best practices is given, the epigenetic factors show that a risk for autism spectrum disorder will not be penetrated. I am not talking about Down syndrome, I'm not talking about Fragile X syndrome, I'm not talking about DIGERT syndromes, Kalman syndrome, Turner syndrome. These are all the syndromes that have, excuse me, as a part of their presentation, some learning disabilities, some explosive behaviors, some psychosocial factors because of the neurobiology of the way the brain structure goes on. But then we have the microarray disturbances that do not have to come into the DNA sequencing, so they are not presented or turned on when there is a lifestyle management is excellent from pregnancy through the first 1,000 days of a child's life. If I'm talking about this, there is a lot of funding and more studies and involvement in developing countries by UNICEF and Legoland, spending crores of rupees to see how the neuroplasticity works and to be implementing. And the UNICEF has defined 0 to 3 years, or even the first 1,000 days, that includes 275 days of pregnancy, 365 days times 2 in the first 2 years of a child's life, development as grade 0 level education. We have lower KG, preschool readiness programs from 3 to 5 years, much talked about. But it is already late because the gray matter or the nerve cells have connected 90% with the outside world, making a mind of its own, whether and developing survival or thriving skills by 3 years, 100% by 5 years. And we have definite data that electronics will not teach a child anything. It is interpersonal relationship, safety and security, and an adult caregiver competencies, building strategies, demonstrating, guiding inherent capacities of every child. Mine is Educare because that is the root word for education. And Educare means bringing about or extracting the inherent powers of every individual. There is a Newton, Einstein, Michelangelo, Chari, as well as engineers, architects, doctors, lawyers, and scientists in every child. Like a Rabindranath Tagore poet is there, Wordsworth poet is there. Are we giving an opportunity, or are we choking the inherent interests, implicit capabilities as per the theory of mind? Because anybody might feel like, oh, what does a newborn know? They don't know anything. You just feed them, they sleep 20 hours. But that's not true. The fetus also has sensations, and it starts connecting with the frontal lobe or the neocortex, which is not seen in any creation other than in human beings. That is the cognitive center for abstract reasoning, critical thinking, cognitive inhibition, focus, attention, memory, then correcting a behavior, emotional regulation starts from brain pathways from the frontal cortex. So we are looking at an exclusive creation for taking care of the environment in a human being. We create the artificial intelligence, we create the machinery, but we are the only ones who can create a whole individual, a whole earth, a whole universe filled with positive behaviors as well as positive outcomes, a whole family. When there is righteousness in the heart, there is a beauty in character. When there is beauty in character, there is harmony in home. When there is harmony in the house, there is order in the society. When there is order in the society, there is peace in the nation and in the world. So everything comes with the biological unit of the society, the individual. And so the educare of that individual is in the hands of the caregivers, the teachers, advocacies, lawmakers, who can be conducive to helping a whole child development and growth. So neuroplasticity is connectivity forming the structure and function of the brain based upon the experiences the infant gets. So neuroplasticity cannot be defined as essential part of learning. Neuroplasticity means learning. As the experience is given, there is a wiring that takes place. That wiring creates a structure and function of the brain from 100 billion cells that every infant is born with. And I don't want to take a standing that every premature baby who lost 30 billion cells is incapable of having a normal life. This is where my equity, my role in inclusion comes. That is a fluid matter that is given to us after baby has survived in the neonatal intensive care unit, born with 1 pound or 1.2 ounces, which is almost like half a kilogram. And that baby has a fluid matter, and the brain knows how to go around the 6 centers. If anybody wants to read all about the brain in the connectivity, John J. Ratey wrote a book on all you need to know about the brain. And there are many cases he given as an example where brain knew how to go around the 6 centers. And we are looking at the symptoms and giving a diagnosis. But those symptoms had a root in the neuroplasticity. So the permanent brain pathways, like for instance, you cannot rotate the hand anti-clockwise fashion, right hand, and try to do the clockwise rotation of the right leg. You cannot do it. It's hardwired. So the way you move your fingers is hardwired. But if you say, I want to do a clockwise rotation of my right hand, anti-clockwise rotation of my left leg, it can happen because it's on the opposite sides of the brain. This is the hardwiring. You cannot change it. If your light and the connectivity in the house construction or your electrical gadgets, if they get short-circuited, you break the wall, you repair the wiring. But you cannot break a human brain. You cannot break a human brain and study all the chemicals of dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, acetylcholine, GABAergic fibers, GABA, and all these things, chemicals cannot be studied. But we pick up which one does what behavior based upon the behavioral studies that were done with the ligands and DTI and voxel-based flow anisotropy studies. The imaging is helping us quite a bit to understand how the human behavior is related to the internal wiring. So, why do we need policies? We are trying to fix drug addiction problems, substance use disorders, alcoholism problems, or ADHD, or even autism, once they have already taken place after 3 years, after 5 years. By the time we start therapies, as per Heckman's rule, the return on investment is only 50% or less, because some wiring has already happened. Basic foundational wiring has already occurred, and there are gaps for dopamine receptor reuptake inhibition and so on. So I don't want to go into the depths of that anatomy and physiology, but just to give an understanding. What we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we taste, what we breathe has a purpose to do only positive connectivity based upon our positive exposure to the environment. And that's when we connect very well to the prefrontal cortex. Anything that challenges what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we think, what we eat, that stops at the mammalian brain level. So we have the reptilian brain, which lizard, snakes, everybody has, that has with the involuntary control for the blood pressure, for the heart rate, for the temperatures, and for the reflex activity. Then we have the mammalian brain, which is a reflective, reactive brain that can control some of these emotions. But then there is the reflective brain, which is the neocortex, which is the good brain that everybody should have robust or strong connections. If anything is challenging, and either in attachment, relationships, or anything, the reptilian brain to mammalian brain takes the messages and it stops right there and doesn't go on to the cognitive developmental brain, that is the brain that is exclusive human property that sits on the eye sockets, particularly left and the right eye sockets, above the eye sockets. That's where we have box-shaped skull, and even the apes that has arms set free legs and walks on legs has a slanting forehead. So going about the competencies, we have many. And to have just a view about these cells, here is a nerve cell. There are 100 billion of them. There are 200 billion. When it migrated from the lower end and created a spine, went into the brain, got situated there by 4.5 months. 200 billion cells, they were not used, through mother's eating habits, mother's relationships, mother's habits, whether smoking, alcohol, drugs, or anything, or infections, or exercise programs, discipline in eating, what is going into the mouth, what the mother is watching, violence or non-violence, whether the mother is exposed to spirituality, faith systems, hymns in their own faith, and positive thinking, reading a storybook to the infant, positive music, soothing music, exercises, yoga, meditation, mindful practices with good eating habits. All those already started connecting in the infant's brain. After birth, they're looking, watching, and they have implicit capabilities that over and above the genetic blueprint they have. 50% is genetic blueprint, but in that they also have how to study the faces, how to study the body language, how to look at the objects and develop cue, cause, and effect, but through the help of the adult caregiver. So there is a message that goes on to this nerve cell, and there are 10,000 dendrites. They make 250,000 cells per minute, or 3 million connections per second, cell to cell to cell. And if this message is measured, safe or unsafe, it will go on to the next one, and then it goes on to the target center. It forms a wire. So the body has to accept the message. Then it is processed, safe or not safe. And then it goes to the next cell, dendrites to the next cell, and it kind of leaps between the cells to connect and form a pathway. They form pathways from the eyes to the back of the brain, from the back of the brain with the meaning to the front of the brain. What they hear goes to the front of the brain. What they feel in terms of touch and everything goes to the midbrain, and then the limbic system decides it's safe or unsafe and sends it to this brain or not the brain. So how intricate in milliseconds all these pathways are forming. And to protect those pathways from short circuiting, we need myelin, and that comes from mother's breast milk in the first 12 months, and as well as what we feed later on to ourselves and others. So what we really need to know, understand, is what goes into the gut, that is 70% immune system against cancer and against infections and against and for forming brain chemicals to encourage this network formation, microcolumns, macro aggregates, and then a wire, if it has a purposeful experience. If that experience is not there, this red activity has not taken place. If this baby feels I'm crying, nobody's taking care of me, baby knows how to shut down the vision, baby knows how to shut down hearing, because they cannot close their eyes and close their ears and run away. They shut down. When they shut down, they don't want to see, they don't want to hear, and then we are compromising the connectivity to the midbrain, feeling, oh, everybody loves me, I'm in a very safe place, oh, nobody loves me, and I need to fend for myself. There are various grades and levels of this ambience, ambivalent, avoidance, or it's completely disorganized. We don't know, chaotic life. When this brain is forming by 6 months, baby already identifies themselves and their relationship with the adults around them. And then there is a silly thinking at that time that if that adult caregiver doesn't touch me, hold me all the time, and cannot sleep with me, I think I don't survive. And the only person who can teach the autonomy, independence, is the primary caregiver who has developed this rapport and establishment, rather than be torn down with the blood curdling cry in the middle of the night, have to work on sleep training, as well as during the daytime redirections with the different toys, but never ignore the crying, and that can be discussed in detail each age group. By 12 months, the infant is well formed. 150% of the gray matter that makes 3 million connections per second is done. Only 16 or 17% happens in the second year of life. The white matter connectivity increases after the second year of life because there is a cue, cause, and effect, and something that the child learned is making fibers to connect with the various centers of the brain, because we have many centers. And that is a fact. And so if anybody is not cognizant about how to enhance communication, how to impart vocabulary, how to impart the reading skills, how to make a child self-regulate, how to make the child have worthwhile self-image, and back and forth responsive caregiving, serve and return responses, that doesn't happen. The baby will learn to withdraw. And so there are more and more studies that are coming up to pick up autism, red flags before 12 months, and banning electronics or screen time under 30 months of life, ideally 36 months of life, when pragmatics are excellent. All in all, if they don't use these nerve cells and everything, pathway is not there, there is no experience. There is apoptosis, 600,000 cells per minute die down. That means 8 to 9 million connections per second are lost. Heber says pathways that fire together will stay together. So we also know if eyes and ears and touch are all used together, there is one strong event that the infant can put it in long-term memory here. And if we just say, okay, eyes just see here, follow the ball, light and dark ball, that is unisensory, that's a poor binding. But if you have a little music, then there is a touch therapy, eye contact, and then baby follows the object. We are developing robust pathways for listening as well as following and tracking. And once these pathways are formed, these are like software that is rich band connectivity. When the baby is reading by 3 to 5 years, the perception is faster. Same thing with the hearing and listening. So we certainly are not talking about developing this kind of a brain where there are quantitative deficiency of dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine receptors, norepinephrine. A certain amount of norepinephrine is good for the alertness. Too much of it will clog the brain, and that's when there is a fear, fright, and flight response. This is a robust connectivity, but if there is a fear, the back brain is very strongly, reticular activating system is on high alert, hyperarousal. So leading to some of the disorders like ADHD, ASD, and so on. So the sympathetic nervous system can be changed into parasympathetic vagal response where oxytocin is high is through our Ashtanga Yoga sadhana or meditation practices. Why are we talking about this? The policymakers. For many mental health disorders, behavioral health disorders, neurodiversity like ASD and ADHD, ED and LD, or emotional disorder and learning disorders, the treatment is counterproductive because we can hemorrhage a lot of funds and the results are smaller. According to WHO latest data, there will be 50% of adults who will have mental illness. Right now, it was in 2014, it was 22%, and out of which there will be a serious mental disorder. 1.1 billion population have serious mental disorder, the most common being anxiety and depression. Whether it is bipolar depression, generalized anxiety disorder, or post-traumatic stress disorder and syndrome, any one of these, they have their roots in the neuroplasticity. And it is said that only 20% of the population will be able to get some treatment for mental illness because it is not affordable by many. And so not only Americans, the global population in general, 40 to 50% of the teenagers by 16 years have had 4 adverse childhood and community experiences of inequities, poverty, and trauma problems. So this is the descending order from anxiety disorder, which could be 3: generalized anxiety disorder, separation anxiety disorder, or simple anxiety disorder. Separation anxiety disorder is very common between 6 to 12 months of age, and that should be properly handled. Stress, toxic stress is 39%. Depressive phase, 30%. Feeling of loneliness and isolated, feeling like I don't know whom to talk to, I don't know whom to go to, kind of a thing, is 28%. Mood swings, 26%. Sad and happy, phases of sadness is 23%. And panic attacks, 20%. Nobody knows why they're panicking, but this has subconscious memories of subconscious unknown factors that causes them to be panicky. Could have happened before they even knew anything, before 3 years of age. So overall, there is a mental, adult and infant mental health crisis. Neurodiversity really taking $85 billion, trillion dollars for treating autism spectrum disorders. And in India, for instance, the speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, ABA therapy costs about 100,000 rupees for one session. How many people can afford for that? So we are seeing a crisis that only is getting worse by the day. So the brain connections, as I emphasized, is typical or atypical by 2 years of age. The role of the pediatrician is to catch from the lazy eye to hearing deficits, after ear infections. Is very, very important because we have only experience expectant development 0 to 12 months for vision and hearing, but for spatial reasoning, cognitive development, speech, language, numeracy, it goes up to 3 years. Solid foundation is formed. If there are gaps, the gaps are permanent, over which we find weaker brain development pathways later on, unless somebody has the capacity to reverse it over a length of time. White matter volume only increases 11% in the first year. Cerebellum, which is called as the small brain, is very, very important in processing as well as in transmission as well as in proprioception movement. Is 40% in the first year. So if we are not careful in the neuroplasticity of first 12 months, we are losing a lot of opportunities of creating a whole individual. The brain growth is 101% in the first year and reaches 85% of the adult weight by the second year. So these are the references that I gave. So who are the stakeholders who need to really take an advocacy role in transforming the societal norms? Whether anybody believes it or not, it's every individual parent. And parent has to ask itself, did I want this child? Did I get accidentally pregnant? Am I able to stop substance uses that I've been used to? Am I able to not have passive tobacco smoking because it will have effects on the lungs of the infant? So in terms of nutrition, in terms of infection protection, in terms of emotional stress and release mechanisms, exercise, eating right with the polycomplex carbohydrates, millets and everything that can prevent diabetes, because diabetes is associated with the fetal cardiac abnormalities and glycemic factors. So parents and caregivers, extended family members, all need to be educated on the importance of neuroplasticity, how to build strategies, how to guide, how to demonstrate, how to give joint attention, how to not scold for everything, how to communicate so that we validate the feelings of the child and teach them how to overcome negative feelings. Pediatricians have a major critical role in identifying atypical development even as young as 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 12 months, and reverse it through their own capacity to counsel and redirect a parent. In villages, whereas in India or in other countries I'm not aware of, there could be extended workers who can be trained by the pediatricians. These are ASHA workers for pregnant ladies, Anganwadi workers who can provide nursery care in the villages in a government school where all parents, when they're going for their labor and day-to-day labor day-to-day workers, they can leave their 2-month-old or 1-month-old infant in the hands. It's not only for feeding the mother, but the mother should be educated during these moments when she comes and gets a good meal postpartum on increasing the gap between pregnancies, not use sexualities for an entertainment and recreation and relaxation, participate in spiritual activities like get-togethers, learn your own faith book. I'm a Hindu, I would say it would be Bhagavad Gita. Learn about 2 stanzas and learn the meaning and have a life application. This can be taught by the school teachers as a service or NGOs as a service, or go online and learn that. Learn 2 alphabets a day. Adult villagers can do this. So pediatricians can direct in such a way that they catch lazy eye between 6 to 9 months, refer them properly, and get situated so that legal blindness does not happen. That legal blindness can be as serious and cause the need for laser surgery and also learning disabilities, because a child with one eye has such a confusion reading and writing because the other eye doesn't work. And they have diplopia when they see 2, so they suppress the vision between 6 months to 9 months, and the ability to prevent that from happening is by 9 months and get them under the care of the ophthalmologist, not optometrist. Educators need to know, if they're looking at a behavior, where is it coming from? What happens in this child's life? What happened in the child's early life? It could be 3-year-old, 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old having a certain pattern of behavioral disorders, hyperkinetic syndrome, or not learning. they will be understanding in terms of neuroplasticity, what happened, what is the screen time, how can I counsel the parent, that kind of thing. Researchers can take a major role in documenting with the multisensory integration how to stimulate all the senses and how the pathways are sprouting. In extreme premature babies, we have learned to give up on premature babies, assigning that they're going to be retarded, and I'm not being proudly saying that. I'm appealing to all. Brain is a fluid matter. Once they're stimulated, every sensory stimulus goes on. The brain knows how to create pathways around the 6 centers. So advocacy is important for this reason. And understanding that brain growth has happened from the time of conception, but also even before. The ovum as well as the sperm could have been compromised if the teenagers are using alcohol, drugs, and other substances in their school programs. And not in school programs, I mean in the school, without the knowledge of the parents. Particularly affluent has money and they can buy and they can use them, try to imitate a society or as a peer pressure. And that tobacco, that alcohol can compromise the sperm in the ovum when they do get married and have children. And so we need to protect them through offering neuroplasticity education, and what their behaviors are today are a reflection of what happened in their life 0 to 3 or 0 to 5. So what are the strategic benefits for anybody who is implementing neuroplasticity, arresting adverse behaviors? Healthcare savings. Over a course of time, over the next decade, one is going to see a lot lesser economic burden trying to fix problems where fixing is inadequate or suboptimal. Mental health conditions or physical disorders like heart problems, hypertension, emphysema by exposure to passive tobacco smoking, or poor management of asthma without asthma action plans. So healthcare savings has a big impact if we take into consideration what happens 0 to 5 and 0 to 3. Educational excellence, if we created solid pathways for reading abilities, listening abilities, cognitive inhibition, flexibility, emotional flexibility, social intelligence, emotional intelligence, measure more not the IQ but the emotional quotient, there is a better outcome. So we will see strong leaders coming out of this academic excellence. Economic growth will be highest return on investment as per Heckman's ROI curve. Equity. So we are not giving up on premature babies because they're extreme low birth weight. We are not giving up on inequities where there are lost opportunities when we bring the nursery care through Anganwadis into the government school system from 2 months onwards and leave a healthy child in the hands of the nursery school teachers at 3 to 5 years of age. So we create, even for cerebral palsy, excellent opportunities for improving their cognitive skills, reading and writing skills. We can certainly prevent autism spectrum disorder. Even if there is a neurodiversity, how to use the augmented assisted technology to teach them how to communicate and managing their behaviors and self-regulation. And this can happen only when there is love and compassion, sympathy and empathy among the teachers with the self-care who can understand all the behaviors, having it stood through the during the time of neuroplasticity, where the brain is a bunch of cells. So every community worker, nurses, ASHA workers, OB nurses, ASHA workers, pediatric nurses in the hospital, so OB at the time of delivery, those nurses, postpartum nurses, lactation educators, community outreach workers, social workers, therapists, everybody needs to know about the neuroplasticity and its role in creating a whole child. And working with the physical development, which we are excellent in doing, but also learning the various components of social emotional learning that are 6 subdomains, and language and literacy and cognitive development with the 4 subdomains. So it should be embedded into the well child care situation. So multisensory integration is important. Everybody should learn what to do with the various age groups. And multisensory integration means it is neuroplasticity. That means we are creating a structure and function of an ideal brain. In pregnancy, what do we know? We want to know planned pregnancy, unplanned pregnancy, increasing the pathways of increasing the gap between children rather than having a child after child, a year apart or 8 months apart, which is not ideal for the mother as well as for the child growing up with emotional disturbances. That is a probability. A strategic public and health economic policy has to create a paradigm shift from fixed setting. We want to feed eggs instead of eggs. If somebody has egg allergy, peanut allergy, think about millets that have more protein. Think about lentils that have more protein. Think about the tree nuts that have more protein and mesoxanthins, xanthins, as well as omegas. So from a paradigm shift, a quantum leap, from fixed mind setting to a dynamic setting of preventive measures, starting with the before the birth of the child, to the birth postpartum period, to the middle school to high school students, and delivering a well organized brain, functioning brain, and a whole child, to 3 to 5 year primary school level. So the impulse control doesn't come after 5 years. They are taught before. And I can give you an example. In my practice, I have many, many mothers who come back and tell me, and very impressively, that they were all scorned and looked down upon by the peer group when they said, Dr. C does not let us give screen time. She really bans it until 3 years of age. But my child is doing okay. He's learning, he's doing talking, he's walking, and milestones are advanced if not. And they would also say some funny things, and they would come back and tell me they kind of are talking ill about you, doctor. I said, I don't care. I know what I'm doing. So when the child became 4 years, the same mother brings another newborn baby to me and says, Dr. Shindapal, I'm ever indebted to you and all the people who scorned me and said that you and I are peculiar for not using the screen time until 3 years. They are having very hyperactive children. They have discipline problems. The preschool teacher comes to me and says, your son is excellent and he doesn't like to talk loud. He answers appropriately. He's got full sentence construction. He's able to read books better than the others. And an example she quoted was really threw me off. That he would, if mom and dad are having a little argument, petty argument, would come and say, Mom and Dad, you adults talk quietly. Until you talk quietly, I'm going to my room and I will read a book and come and get me when you're settled. Well, what kind of a child can do this? A whole child who has social emotional control, ability to express his feeling, validating himself, his own feelings, and guiding the parents what to do. I was amazed. And this is my happiness in sharing that, not done with a conceit, but every child is capable of being that way. So we want to lead the world with robust physical and development, because from birth multisensory integration of movement, bicycling exercises. Remember 4 things: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and tactile. These promote the relaxation, internal relaxation hormones. In that, there is infant yoga we can do, which are passive movements. Then we are releasing the endorphins and enkephalins. There are internal opioids and relaxation hormones like oxytocin that makes a child focus and learn. So we are enhancing the fine motor coordination, we are enhancing the gross motor coordination, we are enhancing the strength and power of the motor system by doing the multisensory integration. We are also giving labeling and vocabulary and the rich syntax in an adult language, exposing to 2 or 3 languages, one person speaking one language for the tone, pitch, and voice, and the other person speaking another language. It could be Marathi, English, it could be Hindi and Marathi, it could be Telugu, Marathi, Kannada, whoever. One particular person speaks only one language. It makes thematic representations in the brain, and they will know the difference between the languages. They can learn all 3, and the more they learn languages, the more cognitive, at least 2 to 3 languages, the cognitive brain is better in these children because they have inhibitory control, they have cognitive inhibitory control, they have attention and focus, and cognitive flexibility, doing something and coming back and completing. So in social emotional development, the domains, in the physical development, it is coordination, balance, proprioception, fine motor coordination, gross motor coordination, and it is so dynamic. It's so dynamic from the time the child is born. Then with the cue, cause, and effect, it happens from sensory to functional. We play with the children from sensory level to functional level to symbolic representation, associative play, as well as cognitive development with the complete pragmatism, ideology, imitation, and role play, which makes an individual follow their interest in the future. They give a glimpse of those. Social emotional development, the first and most important is the attachment. Adult gives the bonding, and infants attach it with a primary caregiver, trusting them as their support when there is a distress. And then self-awareness and self-image. We need to create circumstances where the child's self-image is upheld from the time they're born. And emotional regulation and emotional intelligence, problem-solving skills with amicable emotional support, self-regulation is very important, and pro-social behavior comes under social-emotional learning, as well as pro-social behaviors with the social intelligence is important. In language, is speech is required when infants are communicating with us? No. There is a non-communication expressive language, and then there is a communication exchange. That's what we call it as non-verbal communication exchange, as well as verbal communication exchange. And then there is expressive language, receptive language, and the difficulties, post-infections and everything, we're not paying attention, causing learning disabilities because they were not hearing well after an ear infection. And then emergent literacy, understanding a print has a value in number, a letter has a value, and letters can become the morphology, the syntax, the pragmatics. All these are important from phonemic presentation. Cognitive development. Infants are born scientists. They explore their environment from the time they are born. So they develop concepts as young as 2 months old with a rattle or the squeezy or whatever. the diaper, they immediately, 3 or 5 repetitions make them understand. So we have exploration and cognitive development, for which we want a curriculum. The curriculum is relationship, nothing less than relationship, emotional support. It's not like you created a story and you delivered the material and you kind of assess if the child understood or not. It is intertwined into the relationship of working with them through every routine in giving responsive caregiving. And problem solving skills, amicable problem solving skills needs emotional support and social intelligence. So we combine the cognitive development with social intelligence and emotional intelligence. It cannot be separate. Memory, working memory, long-term memory are from the cognitive development. And imitation, role play is the last step, because the child understands what they want and they imitate the adult in their life more so than anything else. So what do adults need to know? We need to watch ourselves so we get imitation. And Bandura said, violence is a learned imitative behavior. No child is born to be violent. You look at the child, they smile. You smile at them, they smile. You pout, they pout. They imitate you. The mirror cells have a major role in this. So educate from within intrinsic motivation via limbic cortical loops, self-regulation and executive self-regulation. Okay. So my pioneering work as in this aspect has been to connect the senses, applying the Bayesian principles or inference for each sensory input and making it a go with internal relaxation, with the floor time, face time, parents being the main teachers, first teacher, and creating robust connections from outside to inside, bottom up to the frontal lobe. And my patented work is early intervention. Completely, a curriculum is based upon relational quotient, rather emotional quotient with their positive relationships, and a parent who is dedicated to give quality time, 3 minutes out of an hour, maybe a total of 1 hour in the whole day, interacting with the child with the joint attention, guiding the child, demonstrating to the child, scaffolding the child, fostering the strengths, working on their weaknesses, and giving the Dweck's theory of support or effort, growth mindset. The neurocognitive outcomes were excellent in my cases, 40 cases of extreme premature babies and thousands of ADHD, autism, and neurodevelopmental disorders kids, including the Down syndrome. The integrating sensory pathways for communication, livable life skills. And children develop improved attention even among the ADHD, because I've used age-old yoga, breathing techniques, mindful practices, and even when they were not even scientifically presented, because I totally believed in them. And now science is proving that they release oxytocin. If anybody wants to read the literature on the latest treatments for autism, it is in nasal insufflation of oxytocin that controls repetitive behaviors and stimming behaviors and calms the child. And oxytocin can definitely naturally improve through infant yoga practices, as well as the relaxation techniques of the touch therapy and others that I have used. This one is a prevention strategy for me, because it reduced the risk associated with the neurodevelopmental disorders causing neurodiversity, and by strengthening neural circuits on every infant in a dyadic approach, that it was never do this for an infant, actually sitting down and teaching with the parent. And before developmental challenges manifest, and even if they manifested a little bit, the parents would bring it to my attention because they always walked out with the milestone checklist, observation toolkit, so that say, hey doctor, you said this is what my child should be doing, he's not doing it. And I have many stories where fathers were sent out for the war, Afghan war, I think, and the mothers were depressed, and the third child was so developmentally delayed at 5 months of age. When I brought that to the attention of the mother, the child improved. Mother became intentionally active in promoting interactions. So intentional support is important from the primary caregivers. My clinical success, it's on my website, mychild-educare.com, but those 2 or 3 cases represent thousands. Even fetal alcohol syndrome did very well in my practice. So my courses would want to maintain the fidelity of the program, because you cannot take it easy. You have to be observing, you have to be making list of weaknesses. You need a family manager who can help the family, and somebody who could be more interactive and has influence on the family. Care gaps and barriers. Apathy and lack of interest in general pediatric care and population on neuroplasticity. This has been a big barrier. Everybody is a subspecialist. Primary care is not getting that much of attention on neuroplasticity. That needs to change with the advocacy that the government can create. Lack of available knowledge among the healthcare providers. It could be therapists, it could be nurse practitioners, it could be nurses, it could be even the pediatricians or family practitioners, not knowing the importance of neuroplasticity, even in as simple as hearing capacity of post-ear infections, because acoustic reflectometry is only 100,000 rupees. And that can make a world of difference to put T-tubes when the child is not improved in the hearing within 3 to 4 weeks after an ear infection. Whereas it could be very helpful following the newborn who is crying too much if the infant is hearing well. A sleeping infant, it can test even among the infants. Lack of available knowledge in using these preventive measures, using the neuroplasticity to assess the atypical development. And lack of knowledge in the theories of child development, social emotional learning theory, social cultural learning theory, ecobiological learning theories, maturation theory. So attachment theories, Erickson's, so many. Maslow's basic fundamentals, Gardner's multiple intelligence theory, Paget's theory. All these need to be foundational knowledge among the pediatric practice. And a willingness and enthusiasm among the practitioners to prevent neurodiversity rather than fix a neurodiversity is important. Organized pediatric clinics for follow-up and NICU graduates. I think every hospital should have PGs assigned to NICU preterm follow-up with the fundamental knowledge on neuroplasticity. Then they can catch, they can guide, they can help the parents overcome their sadness rather than accept that this child is going to be developmentally disabled. Every child care clinic should have 20 to 30-minute visits so that the provider, 20-minute visit is enough to counsel 6-7 minutes what happens until next time in social emotional learning, linguistic abilities, and cognitive development. Because it's easy. There is dynamic growth, but it's easy to tell when the touch points are there. Well, child care clinics are there within 10 visits. And separate out the urgent care sick visits as a separate one. So in this organized system of pediatric care, We cannot say we don't have enough time, we need to see 200 kids. When you throw in all the kids under one category, then there are 200 kids, but out of the 200 kids, if 30% are sick visits, they go to that PG, and if there are 40% well childcare visits, they go to this PG, and the other premature, that's separate clinic. It's so organized, it can be done. So epigenetics, and I want to mention that the way the lifestyle is the way the breathing exercise, yoga sadhana, what is going on in the mouth. 70% of the gut importance is in building up the system's immunity, preventing cancer, and also sending brain-derived neurotropic factor precursors from the digestive system into the brain. So these are a few examples that I can give to cover up the first 3 years of life. We can extend it to 60 months, but what happens by 3 years is going to be a permanent damage or a permanent construction. We want to create strong foundations for everybody. Later time I will talk about why the neuro pathways, how they go, and what can block what, how the blocks come from external environment and what happens internally at the micromolecular level. We cannot sacrifice a human brain and study the chemical mediators that create from outside to inside a wiring, like a hard wire, like we see electric wire. Certainly the precursors that we consume and the experiences we give with an internal relaxation is very important. Many in the villages, we cannot write it off saying they're illiterates. They all want, every parent wants a child to be wonderful, but they don't know how. Nobody sat down and taught them. You need to do certain things so that and you need to sacrifice certain things so that the infant gets proper experience. So psychosocial factors have a major impact on global development. Domestic violence, interpreted violence, alcoholism in the family, fights in the family, and punitive measures in the family, rigidity of the parenting. The 5 parenting, we are not taking that into consideration anymore. So there is a mixed parenting styles when you allow permissive parenting, when you don't validate the feelings and you're afraid to really tell emotional turmoil in a child's mind. That also is a neglect. So there is a neglecting parenting, there is rigid parenting, there is a mixed parenting style, there is authoritative parenting. It is authoritarian parenting that where kids freeze in fear and they kind of rebound when they go to school. Providing with observation checklist every time the child comes, documenting in the notes, the milestone checklist, and also the ASQs or the observation tools that are provided. Document the psychosocial factors, change in employment, change in migration, change in, any elderly dies in the family. All those factors need to be documented. Reflect on the current practice trends and enhance them to meet the requirements of neuroplasticity. Many are within the economic reach because love is not expensive. And if a mom cannot buy nesting cups, they can use lota or glasses that go one inside the other. They can use spoons, they can use plates, they can use household articles in a basket, and the child can still learn from them. But the teacher is the mother. She needs to know what she's teaching. And catching atypical behaviors and trying to find a doctor, a developmental pediatrician who can guide them in the proper way if the general pediatrician does not have that capacity. What is the parent psychology? what is their trend, how did they get their learned behaviors is also very important. So we cannot diagnose our way based upon a symptom list categorization that is leading to developmental crisis, ending up with a neurodiversity. We should make 180% effort or 200% effort to create better brains in the architecture and function. And that is through sensitization, education, and empowerment. And we are still not in sensitization, and that is sad. I invite all of us to think and consider, and I'm going to read this. Are we intervening at a stage when change is lifetime, easier and predictable? Lifetime changes and corrections can happen 0 to 3. Or are we waiting until neural pathways are deeply ingrained into a trait from a stage where changes are delayed, poor, or unresponsive? Are we just documenting major milestones, heights, weights, and give vaccinations? Or are we taking that extra step to see where the child is in all domains of development? That includes physical, social, emotional learning, as well as cognitive development. Are we figuring a way that our effort is causing the architecture of the brain and be intensive about with the education and empowerment of the caregiver? This is the preventive brain health. Neuroplasticity is the root cause of many problems. If a child learns to eat properly, you don't get diabetes or hypertension. If a child knows how to self-regulate, there is no broken heart syndrome. And the teenagers won't drop dead, because there is something going on in the family. If everybody is controlling their cortisol levels and norepinephrine levels, there is no fogging of the brain and there is no gluconeogenesis causing diabetes. If everybody eats right, the brain chemicals are going right in the brain for neuroproliferation and migration. If everybody eats right with the way it should be, there we can prevent cancer and boost the immune system. So if we are spiritual, we are not going to be ego-filled with high levels of cortisol and epinephrine because things don't go our way and we don't control our own emotions. That's when damages are happening with the high sympathetic overdrive, hyperarousal, and low parasympathetic systems. Spirituality, whatever the faith you have. Sai Baba always said, oceans are many, water is one. Stars are many, sky is one. Jewels are many, but gold is the same. Pots are many, many shapes. Clay is one. Beings are many, but breath is one. That is, we are all breathing the same air. There cannot be different religions or anything. It's you have a religion, you do your own hymns, but do it for a positive reason, to promote the brotherhood of mankind and fatherhood of God. So for me, what Christianity teaches is the same in Bhagavad Gita too. And God lives in the kingdom of heaven, which is your heart. Heart is the seat of love. So love is God, the truth that we are the only ones we can change from an animal behavior to a human behavior. We are God's, born inside. So to promote this sensitization and education, it is at professional level. Every professional has to audit themselves and say, do I need to take a continuing medical education to know more about neuroplasticity? And instructional practices. There are free education everywhere. This YouTube is free, and this is coming with the thousands of papers in scientific validation, and echo sessions are very free. And we can, if anybody reaches out to us based upon what was given in the presenting slide, and make connections, echo sessions can be arranged free of cost for health and human services of any industry. Anybody caring for a child, professionals, nurses, parents, need to earn knowledge about neuroplasticity. Again, pediatric practitioners or administrators like Indian Academy or AAP can create courses on neuroplasticity, application in clinical practices. Those courses have not really taken off so far because there are always concerns, some other changes in research channels, but practical experience is important. Practically, you can prevent neurodiversity, particularly if there is no chromosomal anomaly that is a major cause. Microarray disturbances can be overcome with epigenetic factors. The persons who give governance and policy changes are the government officials. They need to be educated. Courtrooms, the lawyers and the judges need to be educated. Accountability of doing a certain kind of a practice and not implementing certain increases the risk in the boundary violation. So the accountability has to be there when there are risk factors and vulnerability. That will decrease the incidence or prevalence of neurodiversity and other health disorders, physical, mental, behavioral health disorders. Create data systems that are national or statewide, where anybody could reference even if the person is traveling either because of employment or duty, having a certain history and case presentation. Those electronic health records should be universal, encrypted of course, and given to the next provider. So child learning opportunities is very, very important. Schools are a major captive audience for the parents, the teachers, the educators, and administrators. And schools should take on grade 0 preschool program into their primary schools. And the transition report should be given to the 3 to 5-year-old stage. So that kind of prevents the gap. And have the parents get a quarterly, bi-monthly or monthly trainings on completing the workup of neuroplasticity and what they can do and how to monitor prevention and how to control the electronics and the gaming and the punitive measures at home, how to reform their own habits and enhance the ceiling on their time, money, energy, and drug or alcohol habits. What children cannot get at home, particularly among the villagers, among the literate families, they can get it at the Anganwadi centers, particularly in the government undertaking. Every parent can also learn 2 letters and 2 numbers every day, and we can remove the illiteracy. So we can reach out to many. Every 12 to 18-year-old need to know about lifestyle management and everything. Ashtanga Yoga Sadhana is a part of physical education in the primary schools. And that teaches a lot of discipline, muscle movement, as well as increases the endorphins and enkephalins, natural opioids and cannabinoids that are in the brain. How to scale the results? We have the red flags. We can take domains and assess them. I already have those graphs. Use ASQSC and ASQSR revised. Infant ADOS is also available, but that is at a cost. They are available. It could be placed at one central location used by the whole school systems in the state. Catching atypical behaviors 0 to 12 months is very important because we can rewire with a forced habit and through